The studio lights blazed overhead, casting a sharp, artificial glow that only intensified the electricity in the air. This was it, the moment that had been hyped for weeks, the interview that was supposed to be a spectacle, a reckoning, a carefully orchestrated takedown played out in front of millions. Samantha Reed, the ruthless talk show host with a reputation for cutting her guests down with a single well-placed question, sat poised in her chair, a picture of polished precision. Every line, every expression was rehearsed to perfection. She had studied for this night, refining her strategy, sharpening each question like a blade meant to slice through ego and unravel defenses. Her goal wasn't just to interview Donald Trump. It was to dismantle him, to deliver the moment that would go viral before the credits had even rolled. And yet across from her, Trump sat unmoved. He adjusted the cuff of his navy blue suit, his movements unhurried, his expression unreadable. His posture alone was a statement, unshaken, unbothered, unmovable. 3, 2, 1. The cameras rolled. The world was watching. "Good evening, Mr. Trump," Samantha greeted, her voice smooth but laced with that signature razor's edge. "You've built an empire, served as president, and influenced millions. Would you say you're just lucky?" There it was, a question framed as flattery but dripping with intent, a setup designed to undercut everything he had built, to make success sound like an accident. Trump had seen this game before. First they disarm, then they twist the knife. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze locking onto hers, eyes glinting with something between amusement and quiet challenge. "You know, it's interesting that you asked that," he replied, his voice measured, deliberate. "Liberals love that word, lucky. They use it to discredit success, to suggest that hard work, sacrifice, and perseverance don't matter." For the briefest second, the smirk on Samantha's face flickered, faltered, just a fraction of a beat, but enough. Trump pressed on, his voice carrying the kind of weight that couldn't be dismissed. "Luck doesn't build skyscrapers. Luck doesn't create jobs. Luck doesn't make America great." A ripple of murmurs moved through the audience. The energy in the room had shifted, ever so slightly. This wasn't the defensive, scrambling response Samantha had been expecting, but she was a seasoned manipulator. She wouldn't let him seize control that easily. Not yet. "So, you're saying everything you've achieved is purely through hard work?" she countered, arching an eyebrow, her voice taking on the tone of someone poking holes in an alibi. Trump didn't flinch. If anything, his expression sharpened. "I'm saying success comes to those who earn it," he said, his voice firm but composed. "I've been blessed, yes, but I've also worked harder than most people can imagine. I've had nights without sleep, deals that seemed impossible, and challenges that would have broken most people. But here's what really matters. I never did it alone." And there it was, the opening. Samantha leaned in ever so slightly, feigning curiosity, her voice now laced with false warmth. "Not alone," she echoed. "Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the people behind Donald Trump." Trump saw the play unfolding before she even made her next move. "Of course," he said smoothly, tilting his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "When you mention the people behind me, you probably think of my business partners, my advisors. But let me tell you who really deserves the credit. My family, particularly Melania." There, the name she had been waiting for. Samantha's expression shifted, so subtly that only the most perceptive would have caught it. Like a predator scenting an opportunity, the faintest glint of satisfaction flickered in her eyes. "Ah, yes, Melania." She let the name linger in the air, stretching the pause just long enough to plant the suggestion that there was something more to be said, something worth scrutinizing. "You know," she continued, her voice syrupy sweet with false sincerity, "many people wonder about her role in all of this. Some say she's rather quiet for the wife of such a powerful man." The temperature in the room dropped. Trump's eyes narrowed, just a fraction, a shift so slight it was almost imperceptible. Almost. "Quiet," he repeated, his voice still cool, but now edged with something dangerous. "Number dignified. There's a difference, but I understand why some in the media might not grasp that concept." A nervous ripple of laughter moved through the audience. Not loud, not exaggerated, just enough to confirm that the tension had turned. Still, she pressed on. Samantha leaned in, her smile carefully measured, her voice deceptively smooth. She was on unstable ground now, but she refused to retreat. Well, what I mean is, unlike other political wives who are very visible, we rarely hear from her, she said, tilting her head slightly as if she were merely making an observation. Don't you think the public deserves to know more about the woman behind Donald Trump? For the first time, Trump shifted ever so slightly in his seat. Not a flinch, not a sign of discomfort, but something else. Something deliberate. A recalibration, a sharpening of focus. His expression remained unreadable, his posture as composed as ever, but there was something unmistakable in his eyes. A fire, a steel-edged pride that could not be touched. The public, he said, his voice carrying a quiet authority that sent a ripple through the audience, knows exactly what they need to know about Melania. She's brilliant, accomplished, and chooses her moments carefully. Unlike some who feel the need to fill every silence with noise, a murmur of approval ran through the room. The line had landed. Samantha's smile, always so perfectly calibrated, tightened. Just barely, but enough. Her usual tactics weren't working. She was losing control, and she knew it. But she wasn't ready to back down just yet. If subtlety wasn't enough, then she would push harder. Let's talk about those accomplishments, she said, shifting in her chair, her voice adopting a different edge. Because some say her greatest achievement is simply being Mrs. Donald Trump. The air in the studio changed. It was as if the entire room inhaled at once, holding its collective breath, waiting. Trump's expression hardened. Later, long after the cameras had stopped rolling, one journalist would say, "That was the moment Samantha Reid lost control of her own show." Trump leaned forward, and when he spoke, his voice cut through the air like a blade. "Let me be very clear about something," he said. The words alone were enough to shift the energy in the room. The quiet hum of tension that had lingered in the background suddenly thickened, the audience leaning in, drawn to the sheer force of his presence. "Since you want to talk about achievements, let's talk facts." His voice sharpened, not raised but carrying the kind of weight that demanded attention. Melania speaks 5 languages fluently. She built her own successful career. She has represented this country with more grace and dignity than any first lady in recent memory. But of course, you wouldn't know that, would you? His gaze bore into hers, unwavering. Because the mainstream media is too busy pushing their own narrative. The audience erupted into applause. Samantha stiffened. The moment had slipped from her grasp. She had just lost control. Still, she tried to recover, forcing her voice back to its usual calm, its usual poise. "Of course, Mr. Trump," she said, her tone carefully measured. "But don't you think being married to you has opened certain doors for her?" Trump let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. "You know what's interesting about that question?" he asked, tilting his head slightly, his eyes dark with something unreadable. "It shows exactly what's wrong with how some people think." The room had become impossibly still. Trump's voice was steel now. "Success isn't about doors being opened. It's about what you do once you're in the room. And Melania? She doesn't just walk through doors. She transforms every room she enters." Trump's voice was steel now. Samantha's composure wavered, just for a fraction of a second, a hairline fracture in the carefully constructed mask. But she wasn't finished. And in that moment, she made the biggest mistake of her career. She inhaled, steadying herself, searching for one last move, one last attempt to regain control. "Well," she said, and this time there was something different in her voice, something bolder, something sharper, something reckless. "You're a powerful, wealthy man, Mr. Trump. You could have any woman you want. Don't you ever think about trading up?" The air was sucked from the room. A gasp rippled through the audience, sharp and immediate. Someone in the back muttered something under their breath. The studio producer's voice crackled frantically in Samantha's earpiece. She had gone too far. They knew it. She knew it. But it was too late. The moment had already happened. Trump sat perfectly still. Then he spoke. "Trading up," he repeated, his voice deadly quiet. The way he said it sent a chill through the air. It was the kind of stillness that wasn't silence, but something heavier, something charged. He leaned in slightly, his presence suffocating now, every inch of the room swallowed by the gravity of his next words. Let me tell you something about value, he said. His voice was no longer just sharp. It was precise. You think value is trading in loyalty for vanity? Exchanging substance for surface? His gaze didn't waver, didn't blink. He shook his head. Let me tell you what real value is, he continued, his voice unwavering. Real value is someone who stands by you when the cameras are off. Real value is someone who tells you the truth when everyone else tells you what you want to hear. Real value is loyalty, integrity, and character. He let the last word settle, let it land. Then with the slightest raise of his brow, he delivered the final blow. Something that clearly isn't taught in journalism school anymore. The audience erupted. Samantha sat frozen. Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in her career, she had no response. And what happened next would go down in television history. This wasn't just an interview. It was a masterclass in composure, integrity, and standing firm in the face of media bias. Have you ever seen someone try to twist the truth for their own gain, only to have it backfire spectacularly? Let's talk about it in the comments. What do you think about Trump's response? If you believe in standing your ground and exposing media manipulation, hit subscribe now. Don't miss more powerful stories that challenge the narrative.